So, when did Africans arrive in Puerto Rico? Well, in 1509, the first enslaved Africans were brought to Puerto Rico by the Spanish. This happened just a few years after the Spanish arrival in 1493, when, the native Taíno population began to decline due to disease and forced labor. Were they slaves? Yes, the majority of Africans brought to Puerto Rico were enslaved. They worked in sugarcane plantations, coffee farms, mines, and also in domestic service. Slavery in Puerto Rico was legal for over 350 years, and honestly, conditions were harsh and dehumanizing. Did Black Puerto Ricans ever own land or businesses? Yes, especially those who gained their freedom, called libertos. Some owned land, operated small farms, and were artisans, fishermen, and merchants. A few even owned slaves themselves, though, this was rare and definitely controversial. Over time, free, black, and mixed-race Puerto Ricans formed a working and middle class, particularly in towns like Loíza, Ponce, and Mayagüez. So, when did slavery end in Puerto Rico? On March 22, 1873, slavery was officially abolished by Spain. However, freedom was conditional. Enslaved people had to keep working for their former owners for 3 more years under a so-called apprenticeship system. So, how many Africans were brought to Puerto Rico? Well, it's estimated that about 60,000 to 80,000 enslaved Africans arrived. That number is, smaller than what we see in Brazil or the United States, but it was still pretty large in proportion to Puerto Rico's population size at the time. Were the Spaniards the only ones to bring Africans? Primarily yes, but there's a bit more to it. Portuguese, Dutch, and British slave traders also participated indirectly. Spain often relied on foreign slave ships to supply enslaved labor to its colonies, including Puerto Rico. Was there a middle or rich class of black Puerto Ricans? Yes, although it was small. Some free black and mulatto or mixed-race individuals owned land, businesses, or served in local militias. There was a growing free black class in the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in those coastal areas. So, were black Puerto Ricans ever in elected office? Well, during Spanish rule, it was honestly very rare, but there were some black Puerto Ricans who held local leadership positions, especially in military or church contexts. Under United States rule, after 1898, representation increased slowly, but, systemic racism and economic hardship continued to be barriers. Was life always bad for blacks in Puerto Rico? Let's talk about some of the harsh realities: slavery, racial hierarchy, and post-slavery discrimination. But, there were also some positives. Many blacks gained freedom earlier than in the United States South. There's also a strong Afro-Caribbean cultural identity, like Bomba, Plena, Santeria, and more. Plus, family, community, and religion gave many a sense of dignity and purpose. Did blacks suffer more in Puerto Rico or the mainland United States? Well, there were different forms of suffering. In the United States, especially the South, there were Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and racial terror, along with exclusion from politics and education. In Puerto Rico, there weren't formal segregation laws, and there was more racial mixing and cultural integration. Still, there was racial discrimination, especially under United States rule. So, to sum it up, racism existed in both places, but Puerto Rico had more fluid race relations and fewer legal barriers. Life for black people in Puerto Rico wasn't free of oppression, but it wasn't as violently codified as in the mainland United States. Please subscribe, like, and share to support our channel.